Dreamed a dream by the old canal. I kissed my girl by the factory wall. Dirty old town, dirty old town.
Welcome to the Exchange. We are here on this beautiful night in this beautiful town to talk about this beautiful town. It's a place that we live in, that we love. There is so much here. The Exchange has the benefit of being one of the places that things funnel into. So you can see the work that's on the wall now. Two local photographers, Michael Harding and Tina Martyniuk, they have shown us their take on Bloomsburg visually. We are here tonight to do some audio about this town. I'll start. Obviously, you can tell any story that you would like. It can be serious, it can be funny, it can make the town look good, it can make the town look bad, it's up to you. My wife and I came to this town a long time ago, 32 years ago. We moved to Pennsylvania. I had grown up in the Bronx, Sarah grew up in Washington, D.C. We found a house here through the classified ads in Ceramics Monthly magazine and lived in Unityville, 17 miles north of here, but Bloomsburg was always our center. Bloomsburg, as much as we love it, in some ways often seems like it's just a little bit behind the times. So when we moved here, one day we went to Wise on 5th Street in the old building before they built the new building, and we're in the bread aisle and we're looking for pita. We're going to make hummus at home, we want pita, and we can't find it. And there's a kid stocking bread. And we go up to him and we say, "Excuse me, we're looking for the pita." He's like, "What?" Pocket bread. Pita? What? It hadn't gotten here yet in 1992. Now, plainly things have changed. Now there's all kinds of great stuff at the supermarket. We have wonderful restaurants on Main Street. Another example, though, this is not Bloom, but just a few miles from here, on Route 442 in Clarkstown, the Super Duper, the IGA, which is now unfortunately no longer with us. One day, Sarah and I go out there. We're walking up and down the aisles. We're looking for the pasta. We can't find it. And then we realize the reason we can't find the pasta is that what it says on the sign is macaroni. Once again, just a little bit behind. One last example of that. First night. First nights were done here in Bloomsburg for a number of years, hugely popular. People had a wonderful time. In 1999, going into 2000, we did not take part because Sarah was very pregnant. We had friends who came to visit. In that group of friends who always got together at New Year's, whoever was pregnant got to host, so she didn't have to travel. So all our friends come here. They're all up in the Unityville house. At close to midnight on New Year's Eve, we turn on the television to whatever local channel it was, and they're showing New York City. And there's the ball coming down, and we count down, "Happy New Year!" At which point the local television station cuts to Bloomsburg and first night, where the people are still counting down. So we've always been just a little behind the time. So, without further ado, another storyteller here, Laurie McCants, please tell us your Bloomsburg story.
I first heard about Bloomsburg when I was a graduate student at Northwestern University, just outside of Chicago. I was studying theater, and Alvina Krauss was regarded as a saint at Northwestern University. She had long since retired when I arrived at the university, but she was legendary as a very famous acting teacher. And in the time that I was there, a rumor got started around us in the theater department that Miss Krauss, which is what we called her, Miss Krauss, was going to teach private acting classes in her home where she had retired after her many years at Northwestern, her home in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. I would like to point out that she was never made a professor at Northwestern University. No woman received full professorship at Northwestern University until around 1974. And she was the reason why the theater department was worldwide famous. Anyway, one of her students who had actually come to Bloomsburg when she retired here to take acting classes from her, I'm going to call that teacher David, started spreading the rumor around that Miss Krause was interested in taking students in her home in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, private students for private acting classes. And that we should, those of us who are genuinely interested in doing this, we should write a letter to Miss Krause. So I did. And this teacher, David, had acquired from Miss Krause a certain feeling that he, like she, had a God-given ability to separate the wheat from the chaff. And clearly he considered me to be chaff, because at one point I told him, I wrote a letter to Miss Krause, and he went, the day I see Laurie McCants in Bloomsburg, oh. I went on to be here for 42 years as a founding member of the Bloomsburg Theater Ensemble. It's a job that I loved. I loved this town. I love how the town and the surrounding region, the state, and even the nation they have all come through with praise for what we have done here in Bloomsburg. I like to tell people of the time when I went to national theater gatherings and even international theater gatherings. There would be like conferences and so on, conventions, conferences, gatherings. There was a time when I would say, I'm with the Bloomsburg Theater Ensemble, and people would go, oh, that changed. And it became, I'm with the Bloomsburg Theater Ensemble. And they'd go, oh, that was really significant, right? Yeah, and we got to do many wonderful things. BJ went to Sub-Saharan Africa with Bloomsburg Theater Ensemble. It was fantastic. Anyway, I had so many wonderful experiences. My last official performance at BTE was in a play called The Children in 2020, a wonderful play, along with fellow founders Elizabeth Dowd and Jim Good in the cast. And I was thinking, I wrote something about the program that I want to share tonight. I got to find that. And I found it. So this is what I wrote in the final month of my full employment as a Bloomsburg Theater Ensemble member. I got myself into a tangle trying to figure out what I'd write for my final program bio for this, my final performance as a BTE member on the Alvani Krause stage. I will say that they did bring me back later to be in Grand Horizons, a comedy set in a retirement community. I dug through some very old files and found some of my very young jottings about what I hoped the theater I co-founded in 1978 with a handful of fellow fools, what I wanted that theater to be. Some of these jottings remain painful. Starting a theater is hard. Many bring me joy. Like this, something I wrote about the purpose of one of our earliest ventures, something we called Voices, which was really our very first performance. It was a stage reading of words we'd gathered from creative writing sessions with area folks, a lot of them with area old folks. And this is what I said, the purpose of that performance was to sense the poetry of life in Bloomsburg and illuminate it. And I found this, a journal entry from our early years. I said, walking home from an invigorating rehearsal, late afternoon, Main Street, Bloomsburg. The street is golden with the late afternoon sun. That strange light, so bright because it is about to fade. It sets the buildings ablaze with an unearthly light. See me, remember me. Another day was about to pass in this insignificant little town. But I heard the buildings say, and the street and the light, see me, remember me. In the over 40 years I've lived here, I have come to learn that far from being insignificant, Bloomsburg is, for me, the center of the universe. Yes, it has a special fire. With what this town, this place, these people have given me is what I yearned for at age 23 when I first stepped onto Main Street, a life in the theater. Because I live and work here, I've been able to perform roles that are actors' dreams. I have directed plays, old and new, which have stirred audiences and remain alive in their memories. I know it remains alive for them. I hear this almost every day at Weiss or Giant. I have traveled, made, and seen theater in Egypt, Bali, the Czech Republic, Alaska, Morocco, Chile, Sub-Saharan Africa. But my favorite place? Bloomsburg. In my retirement, I will still be here. I'll enjoy my visits to the Elvina Krause Theater. I'll still relish my invigorating walks up and down Main Street. This is my home. Thank you, Bloomsburg.
That was lovely, Laurie. Thank you. I think Laurie speaks for all of us. This is the center of the universe, right here. So, Dawn Moore, tell us about your experience in the center of the universe.
All right. So I wrote this book. I call it my butt hurt book because it's about how I fought the town of Bloomsburg and won. And honestly, I'm still kind of hurt that they tried to kill those geese. So anyhow, I wrote a book about it. I kind of call names in there, but you guys can get past that. You're all adults. Oren's going to stop me after 10 minutes, and then I'm going to read you the end of the book because it takes longer than 10 minutes to read it. Because the photos in this book are done by Michael, the guy, and one of my Save the Geese people, Kristen Novick, is also in the book. So I want to read you the end of the book because it talks about him. All right. So Outflyers, the geese who saved Bloomsburg. I don't think that's Michael's photo. No. Mayor Humberg and his dog Luna strolled quietly along the path at the Bloomsburg Town Park. All seemed so right with the world. He had just been elected and had big plans for his small town. He would make a difference. He just knew it. As he daydreamed about all he had planned to accomplish in his historic town, he noticed a boy and his grandmother. The boy was running closer and closer to a flock of Canada geese. Mrs. Heckelstein shrieked as her grandson took a tumble. "Oh no," the old woman panicked. The boy was covered in mud. As she cleaned him up, she saw it. Goose poo. The wrinkled old woman shouted furiously at the nearby geese. She could not believe what the geese had done. The geese looked at her with their heads tilted in confusion. Geese love the mud. Don't humans love it too? They honked and honked at Miss Heckelstein, politely asking her to leave. Mayor Humberg, disturbed by the commotion, hurried over to help. "What's going on here?" he demanded. "The geese have pooped everywhere. Look how they've embarrassed me and my grandson. This is disgusting," she huffed. The boy stood there, discombobulated, as his grandmother continued ranting. "This park is just terrible. I hate these geese. I hate them." The geese had heard enough. They hissed with determination and waddled into the lagoon. I forgot to show you the photo. That is Michael's. And they swam away from her shrill cries. The mayor said to the woman, "I'm sure the geese didn't mean for, ah!" He abruptly squeaked at the sight of Luna rolling around in the mud. "More goose poop!" The dog was happy as could be in the cool mud. tongue dangling carelessly and ears flopping in all directions. My dog, the mayor shrieked. He yanked on Luna's leash until she sat obediently at his feet. The mayor whined and cried to the town committee, demanding they find a solution to these birds and their droppings. He and his wife had come up with a brilliant idea for a recreational trail, and these geese would not be allowed to interfere with it. The town manager, Mrs. Dooley, was very resourceful and smart. She called around and came back with a great solution. All they had to do was have the USDA eliminate the geese. They would call it a roundup, and the citizens would be none the wiser. What's a roundup? No one asked. Since no one asked, no one answered. In a matter of minutes, it was decided the birds would die. Well, it turned out that the mayor and the council members were not as smart as they thought. Lucky for the birds, Miss Maroney, the local reporter, got wind of the story, and soon it was big news. The townspeople were not happy, and they would be heard. Or so they thought. After a week of silence from the council, the people mobilized. One such person, called Miss Dawn, created signs stating, "Save our geese," and these immediately sprang up all over town. She also made a Facebook page called Save the Geese Bloomsburg, which quickly gained popularity. Despite this, the mayor solidified his stance. He would not let his constituents interfere with his plan. 99 people were in attendance for the next council meeting. The mayor and 4 of his council members sat dismissively at their table at the front of the room. His 5th and final council member, Mr. Tuber, was on Zoom, but the audio was so garbled that no one could hear him. Mayor Humberg admired his gavel. Councilmember Ding Dong stared into the distance as she dreamed up inaccurate statements to fool the people with. Councilmember McStinkyfeet looked confused as he wondered where he might have left his shoes this time. Councilmember McMuppet seemed to be muttering to himself, and Councilmember DeMelfi scratched his head as he wondered what a roundup really was. A news station with cameras rolling arrived just in time. Many wondered what would happen to the environment once the geese were gone. Mr. Sour Candy spoke of the terrible message that killing the geese would send to the children of Bloomsburg, and pondering what the town would try to kill next, made a foreboding joke. What did the goose say to the squirrel? You're next. The council members rolled their eyes and yelled at the citizens for using their voices and sharing their stories. Some who wanted to speak now shrank down in their seats, no longer having the courage to stand. The mayor was so angry that his people disagreed with his plan that he turned as red as a radish and slammed his hands down on the table. Only 2 people spoke in favor of the roundup. How could this be, he wondered. Clearly, he wasn't a very good mayor. In most towns, this is where the story would end. It didn't go that way in this absurd town. Bloomsburg was a different kind of place, a town where the rich usually got their way. So the story continues. I forgot to show you the photo. Yeah, that's Michael's photo. He didn't want it in the book. Meanwhile, the geese sat happily hidden from sight on their nest filled with eggs. The ganders kept a watchful eye, completely aware of the looming danger. Soon the little ones sprang from their eggs. The first goslings born were Luke and Lily. Their parents, Lou and Lucy, were as proud as could be. Lou's sister Henrietta marveled at the beauty of her newly hatched niece and nephews as she sat on the eggs that would eventually reveal her own goslings. Suddenly, her mate Henry began sounding his alarm. He honked loudly and hissed at an intruder. Mr. Schitzel, the park manager, had a stick and was chasing not only Lou and Lucy, but their brand new babies as well. He stomped off in anger when the birds escaped to the safety of the nearby lagoon. But this homewrecker would not be deterred. The next day, he ordered his crew to demolish the habitat that he knew this gaggle of Canada geese called home. The birds watched in dismay from across the lagoon as their favorite sleeping spot was destroyed. Sadly, Lou had just taken his family out for a swim. It was too late when he saw what was happening. They had swam out too far and couldn't safely turn back. He made the fateful decision to swim on. His goslings quickly grew tired, and little Luke became waterlogged. He made it to the shore, but he was terribly ill. His dad desperately cried out for help. Little Luke tried to hang on as he waited for the outflyers to arrive. What's an outflyer, you ask? Outflyers are the geese that come to the park just to hatch and raise their babies until their flight feathers come in, and then they fly away. The next day, 2 outflyers, Pat and Jane, arrived to look after little Luke. They would snuggle him under their wings, and occasionally he would poke his head out to gaze at them affectionately. They kept kind and watchful eyes on him, even after he was waddling happily in the park with his sister and all of the new goslings who had been hatched. The following day, Miss Dawn was at the lagoon, where she often came to make plans to save her beloved geese. She knew they didn't belong to her, but she felt such a strong connection to them, as did most of the townspeople. Deep down, she knew she was destined to save them, maybe even the town. It was a corrupt town, and she would do everything in her power to make things right again. She spoke at every meeting, often doing endless hours of research. She rallied the people, organized many volunteers, talked to park goers, got petitions signed, interviewed for news stories, and sometimes put herself in harm's way. Okay, I think I'll stop there because you don't need to know about the harm's way. If you want to know about that, then you can read the book. I'll just show you the photo. This book is just, he made it so pretty with his photos. Like, that's his photo. And Michael is my best friend, so that's why you hear me like praising, like beyond belief. At first he didn't want anything to do with me because I was that crazy goose lady. And he wouldn't even hug me in public after we became friends because I was going to like ruin his reputation because, I was that crazy goose person. So anyhow, I love this photo. That photo reminds me like of when I finally saw the geese at the very end. It's actually on the wall somewhere here. So anyhow, I got diagnosed with a terrible illness. And so Michael and I went to Alaska for my, what he says, the end-of-life trip, although I'm still here, right? So anyhow, the epilogue of the book is written by one of the geese in the book. So this is me in Alaska. So I'm just going to read you the last part of the book because this talks about Michael, which is obviously important for this show. So again, this is written by the goose. One day in the fall, I saw a man walking in my green space at the park. I don't know this man's name, but he was just so adorable, so I call him Mr. Adorable. He was walking on the path with Miss Dawn. I flew overhead. The wind under my wings swirled around them, and before they knew it, they were best friends. I helped create a beautiful friendship, a team that would work together to make Bloomsburg an even better place. They would meet the governor together, clean up trash together, attend council meetings, and speak whenever they saw wrongdoings in Bloomsburg. They would spend their days laughing and finding joy wherever they went. When Miss Dawn was given sad news about her health, Mr. Adorable took her on a trip of her dreams to Alaska. He had taken her on many trips, and their bond grows stronger and stronger every day. While I take great pride in saving Bloomsburg, I take even more pride in creating this bond between Miss Dawn and her best friend. It seemed like magic to them because it was. It was the magic of the outflyers.
Thank you, Dawn. So again, that's why we're all here, right? Is to make Bloomsburg a better place. If we found it lovely, we can make it lovelier. Sue, would you like to share some of your experiences here?
Sure.
Okay, Sue O'Donnell.
So my name's Sue O'Donnell. My maiden name is Roomer. My dad's name is Ralph Raymond Roomer Jr. When I grew up with my 3 sisters, Sue, Sherry, Sandra, Sarah, my dad would drive us from Buffalo, New York to Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania in the 60s and 70s to visit his parents. My grandparents lived here. My dad grew up here. Taking the station wagon from Buffalo, it became a trip that I looked forward to. My grandparents lived down on West 9th, I think, back in the day. This is in the 60s and 70s. His best friend from high school had a cottage out on Fishing Creek that we would just spend tons of time at. My granddad worked at the McGee Carpet Mill, and we would walk Main Street, and it was my growing up. Long story short, I went to college, I got married, I moved, I did this, I did that. My dad ended up, after my mom passed, moving to North Carolina, where my mother was from. And I got a degree in art and got my first teaching gig down in Louisiana, just in time for Katrina. I was there for 2 years, loved the community that those kind of events will bring together, but hated the heat. And saw a job in Bloomsburg and thought to myself, wouldn't that be fun, moving back to my dad's hometown? And so I applied for it, was one of the finalists, didn't let anybody know I knew Bloomsburg, and was offered the job. And moved here in 2007, just after the 2006 flood that took our cottage on Fishing Creek. Well, I decided if I'm moving back to Bloomsburg, I'm repairing this cottage and I'm gonna make a home here. And the place that I bought, I can see my grandparents' house on Jefferson, and this has just become a place that I feel like brought me full circle. And I love it here, and I can't imagine being anywhere else. And this community is one that I feel like will always be a part of me. Did I forget anything? Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. So these are the people who have signed up to tell stories. Who else here has a story to tell?
Oh, come on, we all did it.
It's not nice to point.
I don't have a particular story.
Just
About your dad.
Yeah, talk about your family's experience here. Because so far we've heard from people who came here instead of who grew up here. And maybe there's something about your experience growing up here that explains something about how this community was and perhaps is. Yeah. All right, so Sue Norton.
You can't have enough Sues.
Hi, I'm Sue Norton, and my family's from Scranton. So they came here when I was 2. So I've lived here most of my life. And what do I want to say? There's so many stories I want to tell you. As a little girl, lived on West Main Street. A wonderful neighborhood where everyone knew each other. Everyone sat on front porches and waved and talked. We roller skated on the sidewalks. We walked our dogs. We played at night catching fireflies and all sorts of things with the whole neighborhood. It was just a fascinating little neighborhood. When I was 10, we had to move. And I was devastated because I was moving, let's see, like 5 blocks up to West 4th Street, and I just thought the end of the world was coming for sure. But my bicycle and I became best friends. I was on my bicycle every day. My town became, I think I knew every alley, every street, every hill, everything. It was just a wonderful, wonderful neighborhood there as well. Got on my bike every day, would go down to the Kiwanis playground and play ping pong and basketball and make ceramics and hot pads. Go back home for lunch, get back on my bike after lunch, go down to the town pool every day from like 1 to 5 or 6. Get back on my bike, go home, have dinner with my whole family. And then as my mom would be clearing the table, my dad would be doing his thing, I'd get back on my bike and go down to the town park, to the Little League, and we'd be there until nighttime. And that was, just a wonderful memory. As I got older, the downtown, the main street that everybody talks about, was secondhand. I was always on the street. But you had Woolworths, and you had Ray and Derek's, and you had all these like J.C. Penney and Sears, where you go in and you look at the plastic food that were in the refrigerators at Sears, and we would go to the record ranch and we would look at the records, and Hers ice cream. We'd always get Hers ice cream. It was just a phenomenal Main Street because every storefront was full and everybody knew everybody. And you got to the end of town, and I'm going to speak about my father, who was very dear to me. He was the manager of Kohl's Hardware. And so we would walk up this side and then cross the street to go and visit my dad. And it was just fun. I loved the smell of the hardware store, the creaking of the old wood, the ramp that went up to meet my dad. Yeah, it was just a wonderful, wonderful place. High school was phenomenal. Not what it looks like now. It was surrounded by a lot of ground where we played field hockey and football. Well, football wasn't down there, but we played everything there. High school was wonderful. The parades in town were phenomenal. They were over the top with floats and bands from all over. It was just wonderful. And, geez, what else can I say? I just think it was a wonderful town. I've been here for 61 years now and can't even imagine being anywhere else. I don't want to be anywhere else because the family and friends that are here that I have forever and then I continue to meet and learn to get to know a little bit better, it fills my heart. And yeah, so that's my story.
Thank you, Sue. Does anyone else, without a point or even looking,
Let's see who else is here.
is there anyone else who would like to tell a Bloomsburg story, who has something to share about their experience here? Okay, we'll do this again at some point. We'll get more people in. I'm going to share a story that's not my story. One of the great things about working here at the Exchange, this is a place where people come in and they talk and they tell their stories, and then I get to share them. It's an immense privilege. Gary Vatican, who for a while ran the best restaurant in town, right here on Main Street, Seasons on Main. He didn't grow up here. He was someone else who came here. He grew up in Bucks County in a restaurant family, and he went off for a while. He was traveling around the world cooking for people on their private jets. This was really pretty rarefied stuff. His sister had moved up into this area. She lived in Huntington Mills. And at some point, Garrett comes up to visit his sister. While he's here with her, she has an appointment at Geisinger. So they get in the car in Huntington Mills and they drive to Danville, which involves driving down Main Street in Bloomsburg. And the way Gary told this story is that by the time he had gone from East Street to West Street in his sister's car, and his very first visit to this Main Street, by the time they got to West Street, he was looking out the back window saying, "This is a beautiful town, I'm going to move here." That's the kind of town we have. It is a town that very quickly can appeal to someone, and someone can come in and make a difference here. The way I like to describe it, it's a town that's big enough that there's stuff happening. We've got BTE, we've got the Exchange, we've got great restaurants. It's small enough that when I walk down the street to go hang posters or something, I'm likely to run into someone who I was supposed to have called. And we can have our business meeting on the sidewalk and get something accomplished because we've run into each other. It's a big enough and small enough town. It's the place that we want to be. It is Bloomsburg. Thank you all for sharing your Bloomsburg stories, and we will look forward to seeing you out on the street and here.
I met my love by the gasworks wall. I dreamed a dream by the old canal. I kissed my girl by the factory wall. Dirty old town, dirty old town, dirty old town.